I haven't seen this level of quality from Fender in a minute, right? And that includes all of their releases from the recent past. So on the heels of Fender basically committing brand suicide over the past week and coming under fire from a lot of angry musicians and also independent companies and shops. And in case you do not know what I'm talking about, just look up, Google Fender copyright lawsuit Stratocaster, something along those lines, and it will catch you up really quickly. Basically, Fender is being a bully after winning a copyright lawsuit over a Stratocaster copy being sold on AliExpress, in which the defendant unfortunately was a no-show, and Fender ended up winning this lawsuit in Germany by default. And it has emboldened them to kind of go after, at first here, the small fish in the guitar industry, independents and smaller stores that most likely can't afford the legal representation to take on Fender. And Fender is making crazy requests, you know, $250,000 in damages, you know, paying the lawyer who are sending these cease and desist letters to these companies, some of which are American companies who are selling out in Europe, and demanding that these companies and shops destroy all of the guitars that they are selling that are reminiscent of the Stratocaster. And so yeah, it's just a mess. And I figured this would be a good week to finally cover a guitar I have been super excited about ever since I got this a couple of weeks back. And today we are going to be covering the Foals FJM7 Ultra. So before we even uncase this thing, I just want to say thank you to the kind folks over at Foals for sending this to me to keep for review. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know whenever I am doing most of the time new Fender or Squier unboxings and reviews, that I am always 100% candid, 100% honest and transparent with everything that I end up experiencing, and giving you my honest thoughts and opinions about the guitars that end up in my shop. And so today is going to be no different, regardless of the fact that this here is a complimentary demo unit from Foals. And I am really excited to get into this with you because I really wasn't expecting what I ended up experiencing here. Now, that said, I am super excited to get into this with you all, especially because this new offset guitar is one that I have been super excited about ever since I had seen the initial review from my buddy Jason Mays. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Now, full disclosure, I have actually had this thing for a couple weeks. I actually ended up receiving this shortly after getting the Vintera III offset guitars to review. And so I have been patiently waiting for the opportunity to share what my overall experiences have been on this, especially because of the fact that this guitar, this Foals FJM7 Ultra, is $589 right now. And I want to share that off the top here because it is significant. Only $80 more than a Squier Classic Vibe Jazzmaster. And I'm going to be sharing my thoughts about how this compares to one of those, and also how this compares to slightly more expensive units like your Player 2 Jazzmaster, but also the Vintera IIIs that just came out, and even other more expensive ones like the American Pro Classic and your American Pro 2. And also the fact that I'm even mentioning this and comparing to an American Vintage 2 Jazzmaster is saying a lot, and I really wasn't expecting that. The first thing in the presentation here that we are seeing is that you are getting a really robust case, right? This case is by Ghostfire. I actually have owned products by Ghostfire before. I have bought some pedal boards from them because I didn't feel like paying a shitload for a pedal train, and the Ghostfire ones are really good quality. So no doubt, Foals is not some, you know, no-name indie startup out in China. But that said, the guitar that they've sent here is just, as you're going to see, pretty shocking. This is something where it almost reminds me of what I've seen on like Momose cases from Japan. It is a deluxe padded gig bag that opens all the way up like this, and it's got the neck support in here with the Velcro to keep it in place, which is super nice. It's nice and soft and definitely very, very protective, and it is a perfect fit, as you see here, for the Foals FJM7 Ultra. Now, in addition, this also came with a bunch of case candy, which I was not at all expecting. When I first opened up the box, they included a lot of extras. So the first thing that they include is a little tin that's got some heavy guitar picks in there for you. They also include a string winder / cutter, and I think the end of this is also for potentially lifting the pins on an acoustic. So again, unexpected. They give you a cleaning cloth, a microfiber cleaning cloth here. Cool. And they also give you their hexagonal high carbon steel nickel wound strings, which already, even from experiencing the stock strings that came on the Foals, they're actually pretty good. They are not absolute crap like some of these strings that come on way more expensive guitars stock. In addition to that, they also included a braided cable in this nice candy color here, kind of to match the interior a bit of the case. And they even included a woven strap. This is nicer of a strap than I have seen on honestly any Fender that I've ever gotten. So I'm definitely going to be rocking this strap in today's demo. In addition to that, they also include the vibrato arm, as well as all of your Allen keys to adjust the bridge, and then a certificate of authenticity from Foals, right? Which tells you the model and the serial number and all of that, okay? So now let's move on to the main event here, the actual guitar. And man, oh man, when I first unboxed this, I kind of, not that I don't trust my buddy Jason, but I guess I just wasn't prepared for what I was actually going to have in my hands. Now, if I'm perfectly honest, and I were blindfolded the first time that I had to try this guitar out, the guitar that I probably would guess if you didn't tell me that it wasn't a Fender is I would have guessed that this was an American Pro 2 Jazzmaster. The feeling of it here is very, very similar. The finish, the fit and finish that I'm feeling primarily from the neck, and also the overall weight and shape of this guitar, the way that it's got the little carve on the end of the heel of the body here, all of that stuff just screams American Pro 2 Jazzmaster. And to be honest with you all, there is a lot of stuff about this that I like so much more than the American Pro 2 Jazzmaster. And I think very, very highly of that model, honestly. As far as modernized Jazzmasters go, you don't really get that much better than the American Pro 2. Or you can even throw the American Pro Classic Jazzmaster into the mix. But I honestly like this guitar even better than that one. And I'm going to be getting into the reasons why that is in just a moment. Now, let's just quickly go over some specs. I printed out a little sheet here so that I can just remind myself of the deal. But you are getting North American alder on this, lightweight North American alder for the body. They make sure to specify this through their spec sheet. Definitely go visit the website because they are very specific about which materials they are actually using, which is not something you even get from Fender these days, right? So a Canadian white hard maple neck, okay? It's got a standard C shape, and after measuring with my calipers, I was getting a 0.82 inches at the first fret and 0.892 inches at the 12th. This is very much a modern C profile. So anyone who has played one of the American Pro Classic Jazzmasters would definitely see why I'm drawing the comparison between the two. This also has, on paper, 1.65 inch or 42 millimeter nut width. When I measured with my calipers, I actually ended up getting a 1.67 inch nut width or 42.45 millimeters. So ever so slightly wider, which is welcome for some folks out there. Now, Foals also made sure to specify that they are using an Indian rosewood fretboard here, premium Indian rosewood. And I am not going to lie, my friends, this is the kind of rosewood fretboard that you see like on a Fender Japan Jazzmaster, right? This is not the kind of rosewood that we are getting on, you know, sub $2,000 Fenders anymore. Okay, I'm not sure if this was dyed or what, but it does not have, it has that waxy quality to it. Almost kind of a you can see the sheen here. And I didn't oil this board, mind you. Okay? But it's got the sheen and it's got the feel and the look of the pre-2018 rosewood that we were getting on pretty much all of our Fenders from probably, you know, the late 90s all the way up until 2018 when they stopped using rosewood on their mid-tier and lower guitars. So that is another thing that's nice to see. So we've also got a 9.5 inch radius fretboard and 22 frets now. So this does have an overhang for your 22nd fret for people that just need that extra fret. And then we've also got, they are calling these 2.5 millimeter medium size high oxidation resistant nickel silver frets. So 2.5 millimeters, I haven't checked with my calipers. We can do that in a little bit, but these look like vintage talls to me for the most part. Maybe ever so slightly wider than a vintage tall, but definitely not as wide as like a narrow tall. Definitely not as wide as a medium jumbo. So these still feel like pretty small frets overall to me. 2.5 millimeters basically amounts to about 0.047 or 47 thousandths of an inch. So only 7 thousandths taller than a vintage size fret, which is usually around 40 thousandths. So yeah, very, very nice and comfortable because I don't like tall, big frets personally on my offset guitars. Now, you also have a bone nut from the factory, and this bone nut was cut quite well, not overly conservative, an average of about 25 thousandths for the bass strings here, which is pretty darn good, a lot better than a lot of Fenders out of the box. And then you were getting about 18 thousandths or so for your treble strings. So that, again, was really, really nice and just shows the attention to detail that Foals put into this guitar. The other thing that they specified here with regards to the finish is that they are using some imported ultra-thin polyurethane gloss. And they specify and they make sure to highlight that they were aiming to have a finish that was very thin to let the North American alder breathe. I'm not sure how much I buy into that, but no doubt the back of the neck here is very, very nice. It's gloss, like semi-gloss kind of feel. For sure does not have a plasticky feel to it This, for those of you who have ever owned a Highway 1 Fender, feels very much like a Highway 1. And this, again, is very reminiscent of the kind of finish that you would find on an American Pro Classic or an American Pro 2 Jazzmaster. So yeah, that is really, really nice. Continuing on, the finish that we've got here is the metallic blue, which looks very much like, almost like a cross between ice blue metallic and Lake Placid blue. But if you look closely, that is not just a metallic. This is a kind of almost like a very small flake sparkle on this thing. And in addition to that, you also have a beautiful matching headstock, and the headstock shape itself is different enough from a Fender, hopefully to keep the lawsuits at bay. But familiar enough to not look friggin' goofy, right? Nothing worse than a goofy looking headstock. And yeah, just really nice. Now, the last thing that I do want to say about this neck is I am shocked at the quality of the fretwork that has been done here. Okay, I don't know. $589 for this, and this is the kind of fretwork that, again, this is better. This feels better. This feels smoother than even an American Pro 2 Jazzmaster. If you take a closer look, you can see that they spent a good amount of time on the dressing of those frets, and they come in, right? They are beveled. They might be even in excess of 45 degrees on the bevel, which makes for a very nice worn in feel. I can't feel the fret edges at all on this thing, which is crazy, Oh, and in fact, it's not that they inlaid the frets so that none of the tang is coming out the side, but man, I'm not gonna lie, like I can barely see the tang protruding from the edges, at least on the bass side. I was having a hard time seeing them. And also, I do have to mention that I did take my fret rocker to check to see how many high frets this thing had, and it was down to a bare minimum. I think I found like 3 or 4 high spots at most, which definitely breaks any record set by any sub $2,000 or even some of the more expensive Fenders that have been coming out. And I will be sharing more notes with you about the setup in just a little bit here. But yeah, it plays great. No buzzing right now. The action is set nice and low, and that is awesome. Now, as far as the hardware goes, that is another thing that is insane about this guitar. This is a good opportunity first for us to go ahead and install our tremolo arm as we're about to talk about it. So if you take a look at this tremolo arm, first of all, you can see that it is nice and long, right? Putting it up here, you can see that it extends basically to our switch here. So definitely quite a bit longer than a stock Fender arm that is being produced now. Secondly, you notice that little divot or ring or head to the end of this vibrato arm. And for those of you who have ever used a Mastery vibrato, that probably looks very, very familiar. And no doubt, I think Foals definitely took some creative liberties in taking inspiration from Mastery, because this FT2 tremolo that they sell also as an aftermarket part is a crazy good feeling tremolo or vibrato unit. The mechanism underneath that keeps the arm from swinging loosely is also very reminiscent to the Mastery vibrato. It uses a little set screw, and you can actually dial the tightness of the arm in to taste here. And the next highlight for the hardware is no doubt this Foals F3 bridge, which if you take a closer look at, no doubt, they also took inspiration from Mastery. It's almost like Mastery meets a Hallen bridge with the 3 saddle design, more reminiscent of the Hallen, right? And this one here has nickel-plated stainless steel for the base as well as the posts. And you've got your brass, your raw brass saddles here. These saddles are not compensated, but I was not having any issues with intonation with these stock strings. I imagine that maybe if you're using, you know, a wound third, for example, you might run into some issues, but that's also a problem even on those more expensive bridges. I mean, the Mastery bridge has only 2 saddles, technically. So that is a non-issue using the stock 10 to 46 gauge strings they've had here. I haven't swapped them out for 11s or anything like that, so I haven't checked. But I do hear that they are going to be coming out with an F4 bridge soon, which I believe will have the compensated saddles. Now, much like the Mastery, this does use rivets to lock the legs in place, or the bridge posts in place, because this is a non-rocking stationary bridge design, and the tolerances are really tight. I get no movement or clicking or anything at all on this bridge, and overall just a really high quality affair. I haven't had to use any Loctite on this yet, and I'm not getting any rattle or anything from this bridge. So I think overall the quality of the hardware being used here is really great. Now, the last thing that I wanted to mention on the hardware front is the fact that this does come with locking vintage style tuners. And I am usually not a fan personally of locking tuners. I don't see a point to them on a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar. And I definitely much prefer the slotted tuners like a Kluson or a Goto SD91. But these are nice, very nice locking tuners. These are a 21:1 gear ratio. And in use, they are nice, tight, responsive, no slippage whatsoever. And it was strung quite well from the factory too. Making sure that with the rest of the set, the fact that the nut was cut quite well, did not need any additional attention from me. That this thing, even with heavy vibrato use, stays very much in tune. Also, while we're up here, you'll notice that this is a more of a modern style design with your double string tree, and I believe these are roller string trees up here. I usually don't personally go for these kinds of string trees, but they are all right and are doing their job just fine here. And you can see too on this FJM7 Ultra that the opening for the headstock truss rod adjustment is extra large, giving you easier access overall to adjusting that truss rod nut. And lastly, as I had mentioned before in drawing comparisons to the American Pro 2, you've got your contoured heel here, which is supposed to give you easier access. For those who play a lot on the upper registers here, it does feel nice and ergonomic. Not something that I do on custom builds or I ever pine after, but for the modern player, I can see that definitely being an advantage and a desirable feature on this sub $600 guitar. Now, moving on to the electronics, again, a premium affair. I was shocked actually to see what I saw when I cracked open the pick guard here. Not only are we getting high quality CTS pots in our lead circuit here, but this also comes with, I guess, a clone of one of the pure tone input jacks, which has basically 4 contact points rather than the typical 2 that you get on a mono input jack. And as such, when you plug in a cable, there's absolutely no play whatsoever there. It keeps it in there nice and tight. You're not going to be getting any crackles or noise when you're moving the guitar around. So that is nice to see. In addition to that, you've got a high quality 22 gauge cloth covered wiring harness throughout, along with your typical Jazzmaster wiring configuration with your three-way toggle here, your volume and tone control for your lead circuit, as well as a proper rhythm circuit here. It basically selects your neck pickup and gives you a darker, jazzier tone overall. Now, one thing that does stray a bit from the original Jazzmaster wiring is the fact that they are using 250K pots here instead of your usual 1 meg pots for your lead circuit. And that results in taming some of the ice pick that some players don't like about the Jazzmaster pickups. No doubt, Jazzmaster pickups, which are single coils and also flatter in their construction with a wide coil wind, result in a mellower but also very bright tone, and these mellow those out a bit more. You still have a ton of high end on tap, which you're going to be able to hear here in just a bit, but yeah, it tames down some of that ice pick, giving a more pleasing tone for some. Now with the pickups here, again, another high quality affair. These are vintage style Alnico 2 Jazzmaster pickups, and they make sure to specify that they were wound with German made copper wire. You've got gray fiberboard bobbins. It is definitely wax potted, with, again, your 22 gauge cloth covered wiring on both of the pickups. But yeah, just really, really nice overall. Now, the last thing I definitely have to give props to Foals for is the fact that they did copper foil shield meticulously all of the cavities in this Jazzmaster, which is resulting in one of the quietest Jazzmasters that I have in my shop. On, for example, my American Vintage 2 Jazzmaster, I do still get a bit of the electronic interference and noise that I'm getting from all my lights and my air conditioner and all of the stuff that I've got turned on in here. And this one, by comparison, is much, much quieter, which is crazy, crazy. I can plug right into the Princeton and it is perfectly silent in the middle position. Yes, you are still getting your 60 cycle hum. And unfortunately, the one thing area of improvement as far as the electronics go that I would say is it would have been nice to have the entire pick guard shielded rather than just underneath, you know, the pots and such. So I feel like that would have made and tamed down some of that noise a bit better. But even as it stands right now, they've just done a really, really great job at shielding this thing. Now, with all of the technical specifications out of the way, it's time to finally plug this bad boy in, see what it sounds like, see what it actually feels like in actual playing. And then in the end, I will share my final thoughts on the Foals FJM7 Ultra and let you know how I think it compares to a lot of the other Jazzmaster guitars that are out there. All right, we are plugged in now to the Princeton Reverb Reissue, and before I start playing, you can just hear the noise floor when it's in the middle position here. And this is something where even on my American Vintage 266, I would still be getting some slight room noise right now, like electronic interference and such. And that would go away when I touch the strings. And no, it's not a grounding issue. Look it up for yourself. It actually tells us that we're grounded perfectly fine. But here, there's no change whatsoever between me touching the strings and not when we are in our middle position. So that is very nice to see. We are going to start with our bridge pickup here. We've got the Princeton set to about 5. This is our clean tone. All right, now both pickups together in parallel. And then now our neck pickup. And then lastly, our rhythm circuit. All right, now we are back on our bridge pickup. No change to the amp settings. Volume is at 10. Tone is down to about 7. Nice. We turned the amp now to about almost 7. We are on our middle position, both pickups in parallel. I am going to turn both of my volume and tone knobs back to 10. All right, we're back on the neck pickup now. We've got the tone and volume both at 10, and we have just turned the reverb up slightly. Now, lastly, we are back on our rhythm circuit now. Both the volume and tone are at 10. We've toned down the reverb a bit, and we are back around 5 or 6 on the volume on the amp. All right, so there it is, my friends. The Foals FJM7 Ultra, and just wow. I do not know what to say. I can't believe this is a guitar that's not only under $1,000, but under $600. The total package here, and you know, again, if you're familiar with this channel, I am mostly a vintage spec guy. I like my 7 1/4 radius. I like my small vintage size frets. I don't need any of these modern appointments, but this thing just feels like a souped up Jazzmaster out of the box. Fender is not coming even close to any of these, and especially because I do have to give the caveat that I did still have to give this a setup, right? I did need to drop the bridge a little bit because it was set pretty conservatively from the factory. We've now got our 2 millimeters, a little under 2 millimeters from the top of the 12th fret to the bottom of the low E string, and we've got about 1.85, 1.9 millimeters on the treble side here. I could set it to be a little bit lower, but it felt good there for me. And also, I did have to do a little bit of work to the tremolo unit when it first came. I was a little perplexed because I was getting kind of a grinding noise when I first got it, and it turned out to be that the wire that they had lined to ground the tremolo, rather than just being kinked and folded over and touching the front end of the cavity here, it instead extended all the way back with, you know, that 22 gauge cloth covered wire. And I think in transit to me, I think it might have come up even more. And so it was getting in the way of the string retaining plate that pivots underneath here. But just that and tightening the collet a little bit, which was also a tiny bit loose. But after that, I was able to dial this vibrato in for perfect calibration to these 10 to 46 strings, set to float, so to speak, so that your trem lock here works, that if you break a string, it will bring the rest of your strings back to pitch if you engage the lock. So that is super nice to see. The tremolo or the vibrato itself, goodness gracious, this does not feel like something that has any business being on a budget guitar like this. It feels honestly a stone's throw away from a mastery vibrato, and they sell this as an aftermarket part. They call it the FJM7 vibrato. On the spec sheet, they list it as an FT2 vibrato. And unlike the mastery, yeah, it does come with that lock, but it has all of the perks of that $200 something vibrato in what, an $80 package, or maybe even cheaper than that. I haven't looked recently, but yeah, that is crazy. And it's just very, very responsive. Having that extra long arm here too, it's just giving me the same feel that I get from vintage units or more premium aftermarket units. So that is really, really awesome. The bridge in practice here, perfect. I wasn't getting any syncing, no rattling, no nothing. I mean, totally stable. It feels high quality to me. I wasn't having any intonation issues, at least that I could hear. Nothing was coming loose. And yeah, you do see, at first I was like, do I need to shim this? But no, because it's a fixed bridge, a stationary bridge, it's not intended to rock. That's something that a lot of folks get wrong sometimes. They'll get something like a mastery bridge and they'll think, oh my gosh, I need to shim. I need to get that, you know, 3 millimeters plus between the bottom of the base of the bridge and like the top of the pick guard and whatnot. But no, because you have a stationary bridge here, you want to facilitate through your setup the strings actually gliding over those saddles. And when your bridge, a stationary bridge, is sitting too high, regardless of how well the saddles are designed, and this includes the mastery, the string tightness is actually going to end up, when you use the vibrato, pulling your saddles back and forth, right? Because your bridge isn't rocking. So they actually, you know, did that well. I didn't need to add a shim to it, and it's not completely decked. I've still got, I would say, about a millimeter or so of height between the bridge and the pick guard itself. So I was able to set it up beautifully with very little effort. The pickups here, they sounded good to me overall. Shockingly good, especially for this price range. Do I still think that there are better pickups out there? Yes, I still think, for example, I did like the sound of the American Pro Classic Jazzmaster a bit better than this, but these are perfectly fine stock pickups. They sound like a good Jazzmaster should. If I have any criticism of them, maybe the neck pickup alone was a little bit darker than what I wanted it to be, but I could probably dial that in a bit more if I were to raise the pickup ever so slightly. Or maybe it comes down to the fact that these are I'm used to more top end sparkle on a Jazzmaster, and because these are using 250K pots, maybe I am just missing some of that. But overall, it sounded good to me. I definitely wasn't getting ice picky kind of you know, sound, no overload on the treble. So that was really, really nice. And yeah, the tuners held up very well. I don't know. Overall, I think I'm just very, very pleased with this package, with the caveat being that I did still have to do a setup, albeit a very minimal one here. It did still need that extra bit of attention, but now that it's been set up, you know, the strings stretched, a little bit of lubrication up at the nut, and the saddles as well. My goodness, I challenge you, you know, to compare this to an American Pro 2 Jazzmaster and tell me that this doesn't actually feel as good as that guitar. And that guitar is what? I think it's like $2,000 or close to $2,000. And this one at $589. Like, if you don't care about what's on the headstock and you just care about a great guitar that you don't need to do a ton of work on to get dialed in awesomely, my goodness, this is, I don't think that anything else out there compares to this. And that's my honest truth. I wouldn't be saying any of this stuff if I didn't actually experience it. And again, full disclosure, I've had this. This isn't my first time actually playing this. This isn't really even a first impression. This is me after having this guitar for at least 4 weeks now and playing it back to back, playing it against all of the Vinteras. Now, if I compare this to the new Vintera III Jazzmaster, I like this neck profile more. It's slimmer. And I do, in this instance, this, despite the fact that this is a 9.5-inch radius and the frets are maybe a tiny bit bigger, this just feels awesome to me. It's nice and slim at the, you know, 0.82 again, 0.82 inches at the first fret, and doesn't even break 0.90 at the 12th. That is like pre-CBS Jazzmaster City to me. You know, like early 60s Jazzmaster feel to me. The quality, again, of the rosewood here, as we were talking about from the top, this even rivals, I hate to say it, I mean, I'm, again, beside myself here. Beside myself. In, I want to almost say this, after a good setup, this is on par. This is on par even with some of the traditional 60s made in Japan Jazzmasters that have been coming out. And if you're comparing this to one of the original, you know, JM66, JM66B, the hardware, the pickups, there's nothing here that you really have to change. Whereas if you got one of those 90s JM66 guitars, you know, not only were you getting crappy electronics, you weren't actually getting Jazzmaster pickups in those. Those were more like Strat pickups, right? The tremolos were janky. You get a, you know, the original threaded saddle bridge, which a lot of people find to be a nightmare. So even them are on the chopping block when it comes to comparing this Foals. It's a real head scratcher, folks. I really am confused, because I wasn't expecting it to be this good. I really wasn't. And now, especially now, right, with what is going on with Fender, and people, you know, wanting to boycott them and whatnot, if that's where your head is at, especially with all the lawsuit stuff on the Stratocaster bodies and being very, you know, anti-competitive and pursuing what seems like a monopoly over particular guitar body shapes that have been ubiquitous with electric guitar for the past 72 years. Something like this is a crazy, crazy good option. I can't think of anything, not even that comes within $1,000. I mean, I think the closest thing that I've been this impressed by out of the box is maybe the Heritage 60s Fender Japan Jazzmaster. That one also required very minimal setup, even with that original threaded saddle bridge. But no doubt you get something like an even more robust feeling with this combination of hardware here. And it excels and surpasses even that guitar, which is for me goated, but it surpasses that. This vibrato again is crazy. It's crazy. I cannot believe that this even exists. So there it is, folks. I mean, yeah, out of the box, yeah, it did need a bit of attention, but just a little bit. And if you have the patience to do that, or can bring it to a tech that can actually set it up well for you and doesn't do anything stupid, like add any additional shim to this neck when it doesn't actually need it. Maybe if you swap out this bridge for rocking and you want to put in an original Jazzmaster bridge or a Mustang style bridge, then I could see needing to do that in the setup. But yeah, fit and finish wise, again, the fretwork, this fretwork puts even the American Vintage 2, or even some, I mean, I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating. I know it sounds like it, but I'm not. This fretwork is like something that is something that you would expect on like a premium custom made for you kind of job, and not something that I don't think I've ever experienced really on the majority of production, mass production guitars that I have played over the past, definitely the past 6 years, right? I haven't seen this level of quality from Fender in a minute, right? And that includes all of their releases from the recent past. So there it is, my friends. The Foals FJM7 Ultra, for sure. If you are even thinking about buying a Squier Classic Vibe Jazzmaster new for only $80 more, $89 more, do yourselves a friggin' favor and go with this. Even if you're thinking about getting a used Player 2, like the Player 2 necks are nice too. The rolled edges are nice, but you get that here too. And the fretwork is even better. I'm repeating myself now, but again, I'm shocked. Genuinely shocked and very impressed. So shout outs again to our kind friends at Foals, and thank you to them again for sending this to me for review. I am excited now to see if this is what the deal is going to be, if I am able to get one of their Jaguars from them. As you know, I'm Mr. Jaguar. That is my domain. That is my favorite offset guitar. Is it going to stand toe-to-toe with this in the same exact way? There are, rumors that are starting to leak out that they're going to be doing a Mustang. That is another thing. Mustangs have also been my world, especially in the more recent past. Is that, are they going to have improved the dynamic vibrato on that? What's that going to be like? That's very, very exciting to me. And this is an exciting brand overall. And I totally do wish them, success, because what they're doing here, they clearly did their research. They clearly did their research. And they have just put out a fantastic product at a price point that the majority of folks out there who want, a budget guitar are going to be getting a lot more for their money. And to be honest, a guitar like this is even more significant now than ever before, because, global economies are unfortunately on a downturn because of all the friggin' pandemonium and nonsense that is going on, and just the fact that corporations out there most of the time, and our favorite brands are not excluded from this, they're trying to give you less and charge you more, and that is the trend, right? That is a trend that is not going to be stopping anytime soon. And it is not lost on me. I wasn't born yesterday. No doubt part of the reason why a guitar like this can exist is because the labor in China is cheaper. And so that is something that is another consideration. But at the same time, you can also tell that this brand cares about the integrity of the products that they put out. And that matters. The integrity of what you are putting out matters. So, yeah, kudos to Foals for making a hell of a Jazzmaster. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video, my friends. Again, if you have any experience with this model, if you bought one, I would love to hear from you down in the comments, especially your thoughts on it and in comparison to other Jazzmasters that you have. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars buying tips.